How's it going, guys? I'm FOX Weather Meteorologist Jane Minar in for Steve Bender. It's the Week 9 college football ROWI report. So let's get into it. We've had quite an interesting season up to this point. A couple fluctuations, a couple slides with our teams as far as those college football rankings go. We have, unfortunately, some unsettled weather getting into our weekend slate. Here's a look at the Southern Plains. A lot of moisture lifting up from the Gulf. And this is out ahead of a cutoff low pressure system. So this storm system is unfortunately going to drag slowly across the Southern Plains. Texas, Oklahoma, we bring Arkansas, Louisiana into the mix as we get through Saturday and Sunday. And so that brings us widespread showers and thunderstorms. Could we get lucky? Maybe we find that perfect sweet spot in the day. Maybe. But here's the deal. So let's break it down game by game. We'll start things off with Ole Miss, who's headed over to Oklahoma to take on the Sooners. Ole Miss, tough loss last weekend. But Oklahoma Sooners, we've got a fun one to watch here in Norman, Oklahoma. It's a 12 o'clock game. So when we take a look at our risk of weather impact, right, we're breaking it down by our rain impact, wind threats, temperature impact. Rain impact is maxed out. So when you average all of this together, max ROWI 7.0, the wind impact edges us into that medium category. So again, a little breezy as we get into the game. But I got to tell you, this is one of those games that we have to watch as we get into the weekend, because we could see some updates here. And my thinking is maybe we start to see some improvements. That high risk for ROWI is really at the kickstart of the game, where we have the greatest opportunity of widespread showers. Our low is going to be on the move. So perhaps we see a bit of a break in the rain as we get later on into the game. Winds begin to relax. But again, something that we have to watch for very closely. In the meantime, though, expect at least wet conditions, a wet field, and how that is ultimately going to play out between our two teams. We'll see. We also have another game up in Kansas, and so that's something that we're going to be watching for. Kansas State Wildcats, they are hosting the Jayhawks, or the other way around. And we do have a risk of weather impact, of course. The showers are in the mix, 7.9 in that precip scale. Wind impact of 3.2, temperature impact marginal, less than 1. Really isn't going to play a bit of a factor. We kind of have to wait later into the season, I think, for that temperature impact to really play a role. But in the Battle of Kansas, max ROWI puts us at a 3.8. So that rain threat just edges us up into the medium category. And again, when we break it down hour by hour, it's really just all about the timing. And especially as we get later into the game, if we're continuing to deal with showers that just don't let up, that could maybe play a bit of a role and maybe start to see more of an uptick in the opportunity in that coverage. But temperatures into the upper 50s. I mean, I know the temperature impact is on the lower end of the scale, but just as a spectator, I have to imagine that's going to be a little bit on the cooler side. Let's head to our next game. So we have the Auburn Tigers, who are heading to the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is in Fayetteville, Arkansas, 12:45 kickoff on Saturday. So this is one of those games that we have to watch. The progression of that warm front connected to our storm system, right? Where does that sit in terms of Fayetteville, Arkansas? I think we're on the north end of that. So overall, it's mostly going to be a rain story. Precip impact, we're all the way up there to 7.9, not entirely maxed out. Wind impact in the 4.7. So again, we average everything together. 4.8 puts us in the medium category. Let's go to that hour by hour forecast. Showers are in the mix. Again, because we're north of the warm front, I think that puts us in a position where we really don't have to worry too much at this point about any lightning concerns. Of course, lightning, thunderstorms lead to delays, which certainly would halt the game. Rain, more of an impact on the field in terms of passing, rushing, kicking. So that's where things could get a little messier as we start to see those wetter conditions into the afternoon. All right, final slate up here. So this is where we're going to really see the culmination of this storm come together. LSU hosting Texas A&M. And as we get into the evening, this is a 7:30 kickoff. Our rain impact is maxed out at a 10, wind impact at a 6.4, temperature impact 4.6. So when we bring that all together, no surprise, we're in a high risk of ROWI, risk of weather impact, 7.0. breaking it down hour by hour, and this is when that thunderstorm risk comes into play. The reason being, south of the warm front, ahead of the cold front, as this storm begins to shift across the southern plains. And that unfortunately is what puts Baton Rouge right in the crosshairs of thunderstorms through the peak afternoon and then continuing right into game time. So certainly at the start of the game, leading through the first half, we have to be mindful of lightning. Lightning is what puts a halt to the game. It's what could even delay the start of the game if we have thunderstorms in the vicinity of the stadium. It looks as though once the sun sets, right, we're still going to be tracking those showers and thunderstorms, but overall the threat's starting to decrease as we get later into the game as far as any lightning concerns, but it's still wet and still a little bit breezy as the system starts to progress its way slowly off to the east. So that's what we're looking at as far as our slate goes across parts of the southern plains. We still have a couple more problems though when we look back out across the country. Let's go to the Pacific Northwest. We have an AR on our hands. Now this story has been fluctuating a little bit on the potency of that atmospheric river, where the worst of it is going to set up. But I can tell you through the end of this week, it is certainly going to bring a lot of rain to the coastline. So when we look at that flood impact on the I-5, Washington, Oregon, down through north central California, we do have some concerns that a little bit too much rain not only is going to lead to just general street flooding, but also too will watch the rivers and things like that. So let's kick things off because it's along the coast of Oregon that right now we're at a level 4 with that atmospheric river, which is a very potent storm and can oftentimes lead to significant flooding. Well, outside of that, when we think about football and we bring a game into the mix in Eugene, Oregon, again, 4 o'clock kickoff Pacific time, you can watch at 7 p.m. Eastern. We do have a maxed out rain impact. We have a wind impact at a 7.5. The transport of this moisture is also going to be fueled by some stronger winds aloft. That gets mixed down with some heavier rain. Temperature impact at a 3.5. So this is going to be a messy one. Average this all together, and that's when we start to see, of course, some concern. The risk of weather impact maxed around a 7.0. We'll see how this shifts or changes as we track the potency of that atmospheric river. But Eugene, Oregon is expected to really be in the mix of things as we get in through the day Saturday. So that hour by hour forecast is at a high the entire time. Temperatures are in the 50s, held steady. Now, the reason why we don't have any colder temperatures is because typically with an atmospheric river, you have a southwesterly wind. And you can note that too when you look at the winds around 15, 20 miles an hour. That southwesterly wind, something to take note of for our kickers, but also too, rain is going to make things very, very messy on the field. So, Jared, we know that I think this could be one of the more impactful games for us to watch as we get into the weekend.
Yeah, the one thing I do want to emphasize with the sustained winds can be a little bit higher at times, so that matters a bit more for your longer deep passes 20 yards down the field and even 10 plus yards down the field. We'll find that sustained winds at 20 miles per hour, you'll see a decrease in efficiency with those passes. It's more difficult to complete them, and usually when they're attempted, they don't turn out as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Some more short screens, right? Those 10-yarders, perhaps something that we'll have to watch for. But so definitely an interesting game, not the only game that we're going to see some risk of weather impact to. Seattle, Washington, as we go up the I-5, we are still expecting rain to linger around into the weekend. So kickoff 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, watch at 3:30 Eastern. Illinois headed to Washington in this Big Ten matchup. Precip impact maxed out, no surprise. We expect those showers in the mix when we're talking atmospheric river. A lot of moisture is getting thrown up onto the Pacific Northwest. Wind impact to 7.1, temperature impact to 3.9. So when we average it together, we're back in that high category. Risk of weather impact set to a 7.0. Hour by hour, note a little bit of a shift here. As far as we head down the coast, Oregon, all hours of the game, right? We do see some weather impact in that high range. We'll see how this goes at Husky Stadium in Seattle. Maybe the pressure of the most moisture drifting south by this point as we get into Saturday afternoon, but we can expect that we will see some rain in the mix, and that is certainly going to create a problem. But note the winds, Jared, a little lighter up there in Seattle.
Yeah, the little bit there. It's still enough to cause problems with the kicking game, especially with the rain combined. But overall, it's still something to keep in mind. Even as you get later into the game, we actually see the wind tick up just a tad on this. Well, the forecast will evolve. You'll be able to check back in here tomorrow for Fox Weather Tailgate on Thursday, and then on Friday for the update pod with Steve Bender, hopefully back in good health.
I know. We got to get Steve back in the mix. I would like, maybe the three of us can do it together. But so that's our ROWI report for week 9 of college football. A lot of good matchups. Of course, last weekend we had a couple slides in the rankings. So we'll see if Mother Nature has her hand in providing us even more fun.